Welcome to Flair Study. If you're preparing for the T15 exam, you're in the right place. In this video, we'll go through hands-on training for AWS S3 covering the most important topics you need to know before proceeding with the exam. I will cover all the key services included in the T15 syllabus, and this is the first service we'll focus on. In this video, we will cover S3 Basics and Storage Classes, S3 Security and Bucket Policies, S3 Website Hosting, S3 Versioning and Data Protection, S3 Logging and Monitoring, S3 Replication across regions, AWS Snow Family Integration. In this series, we'll dive deep into real-world scenarios covering everything from bucket security to versioning, logging, replication, storage classes, and even AWS Snow Family. Each video will be completely hands-on, with step-by-step explanations to help you apply what you learn instantly.
Okay, so let's practice using Amazon S3 as a service. So I'm going to go into the S3 console. So we get into this new console and we have 0 buckets in our accounts. So let's go ahead and create our first bucket. Now, when you click on the Create button, for the bucket, as you can see, we have to put a bucket name in here. The bucket name have to be globally unique. So if I try to type, for example, the bucket name test and try to go all the way down and create my bucket, I'm going to get an error. And it says that the bucket name test already exists. So someone in AWS globally has already created a bucket with the name test. So hopefully you need to choose a name that's going to be specific and unique to you. For example, Stefan CCP 2020 demo. Most likely someone will not have used that name, okay? Next, we have to select a region. So the region for a bucket, it could be something very close to you. So I'll choose EU Ireland, EUS1, but choose a region close to you. But something you may notice is that in the top right corner of the S3 consoles, it says global. So the Amazon S3 console is a global console, but when you create an S3 bucket, it is linked to a specific region. So just remember that. Okay, so next I'm going to scroll down. There is a block public access setting that I'm going to leave on, and we'll see this later on. Then there is versioning, we'll see it later on as well, so we'll keep it as disabled for now. Tags are optional, so we won't do them, and encryption as well, we'll see this later. So I'll just go ahead and click on Create the Bucket. My bucket is now created, and we need to go into it by clicking on it, and we'll be able to add objects. So here is my bucket Stefan CCP 2020 demo. And what I need to do is to start uploading some files into my buckets or objects. So if I scroll down, as you can see, we have different tabs: object, properties, permission, metrics, management, and access points. And we'll see a few of those in this section. But for now, what I want to do is to upload objects. So you can drag and drop files directly into this box, or you can click on the upload button right here. So I'm going to click on add files, and I'm going to upload our first file into our Amazon S3 bucket, which is called coffee.jpg. So it's an image of a coffee cup. And as we can see, when we upload that file, we have a bunch of options. So it's going to say where it's going to be stored. So for now, it's going to be stored directly at the root of my bucket. It gives us some settings about my bucket. For example, versioning is not enabled, but we will see versioning later on, so don't worry about it. So I'm just going to scroll down and click on upload. Now my file is being uploaded and it is successful. My file is now in my bucket. So I'm going to exit by clicking on the top right corner and scroll down again. Now I see that I have one object into my S3 bucket and the name is coffee.jpg. Now, how do I open this file and how do I look at the content of this file? So if I click on coffee.jpg, I am taken into the object UI for Amazon S3 console. And so we can learn about the object. So with the details of the object and the versions. For now, we don't have broken versioning, so we don't worry about this too much. Let's go into the details. Now, we have different ways. So we can look at who is the owner. It's me, my account. The region, when it was last modified, the size, the type, the key, the S3 URI, the Amazon resource name, e-tag, you don't need to worry about it, and finally the bucket object URL. So let's open this object in 2 different ways. The first one is that I want to go into bucket actions and click on open. If I do so, it's going to open a new tab and show me this picture of coffee. So this is working great. But if I go back into my S3 management console and click on bucket URL. So I'll click on this one, object URL, and open in the new tab. As we can see, we get an access denied because we don't have the right to access the objects. So how come this worked in the second tab and doesn't work in the third tab? Well, the idea is that we're using the buckets. Right now, the bucket is not public. And so if we try to open the file using its public URL, it's not going to work because our bucket is not public. Now we'll see when we do bucket policies how to make our bucket public. And the second tab, when we did object actions open, was opening a very special URL. As you can see, the URL is much longer. And this URL is called a pre-signed URL, and it contains my AWS credentials into the URL. So it's not just a public URL, it's saying, hey, here are my credentials, or a way of passing some of my credentials. And so AWS recognizes that and says, okay, I can show you the picture. So we will see how to make that object public in a future lecture. Okay, now let's go back into our buckets, and I'm going to do create folder, and I'm going to create a folder named images. So we'll just click on create the folder. And now we have coffee.jpg and the images folder. If I go into the folder images, I can upload an object there. So I can click on upload, this time add files, and I will upload my beach.jpg file. Finally, I will scroll down and click on upload. The file has now been uploaded, and as you can see, the destination is now the images folder within the bucket that I have created, okay? So it looks just like if we go back to the bucket by clicking on exit. So if we go to the bucket itself, it just looks like the kind of storage cloud you've been using, maybe with Dropbox or Google Drive, these kind of things. We just have objects and folders, but they're all objects internally for Amazon S3. And finally, as with any object storage thing, we can probably delete some stuff. So if I click on the images folder and click on delete, I'm able to delete the folder as well as any object within the folder. So yes, these objects are going to be permanently deleted, and I'm going to say yes, permanently delete. So you just copy and paste that in and click on delete objects. And there we go, the objects have been deleted. So that's it for the introduction to Amazon S3. We've uploaded some objects, we've seen a few settings already, and I will see you in the next lecture. So now we'd like to make sure that we can access this coffee.jpg using the public URL and not get an access denied. For this, we'll practice bucket policies. So back into my S3 bucket, I'm going to go into the permissions tab. And on the permissions tab, I'm going to have to create a public bucket policy. So the bucket policy setting is right here. But to write a public bucket policy, I must first disable all the public access settings that are turned on for these buckets. So if I scroll back up, these public access settings are meant to prevent anyone from, by mistake, making an S3 bucket public and therefore leaking all this data onto the web. But because we explicitly know and want that we want to make our S3 bucket public, we are going to edit these block public access settings, and I'm going to uncheck everything and click on Save Changes. And I will type in confirm to confirm. Okay, so now we are able to write a bucket policy that is going to be public. So I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to edit this bucket policy. Now we have two ways of doing it. We can look at policy examples, and these come directly from the AWS documentation, and you can refer that to them in your own time. Or you can use the AWS policy generator, which I really like and we'll be using it right now. So we are going to select the policy type, and you need to make sure that for the type of policy, you select S3 bucket policy. Okay, make sure you do so, otherwise the settings won't be the same. Next, we want to allow, as the effects, anyone, so we'll say principal star, to do a get object, to be able to read objects. So for doing so, I will click on actions and I will scroll down, and I'm looking for a get object. So just one action called get objects. Okay. And finally, for the Amazon resource name, I need to provide the S3 bucket name. So let's go back into the S3 management console. The bucket ARN is already ready for us, so I can just click here to copy it, going back into the policy generator and paste it. If I do so, I need to still add a trailing slash, only one, and then a star, because this action called get object applies to objects within my bucket. And objects within my bucket are anything that comes after the bucket name. So this is why we add a slash and a star. When we're done, we click on add statements and generate policy. So this policy, as we can see, allows the S3 get object action on this bucket object. So this is star slash star from anyone. So let's copy this, and this is what's called a public S3 bucket policy. And I'm going to paste it here, and finally click on Save Changes. So now my bucket is public. And how do we know this? Well, the access now has been changed to public. So this bucket can be accessed by anyone on the internet. So let's have a look. If we go into the objects and look at this coffee.jpg file, and then I'm going to click on the object URL, we can now load the object directly from the simple public URL, and we don't get an access denied anymore. So that's it for bucket policies, as well as this short introduction to a policy generator, and I will see you in the next lecture. So far we've uploaded our coffee.jpg, and by the way, we could upload maybe our beach.jpg as well at the root of our bucket. So now it's done. And so what we'd like to do is to be able to take that bucket, okay, and ensure that it becomes a website. So to do so, we need to enable the bucket as a website, but first we need to upload an index.html file into our bucket to make sure that we have a HTML file to view when the bucket is a website. So let's go ahead and add this index.html file. And this is just going to display a small header, as we'll see in a second. So I'm going to upload that file again, and we're good to go. Now back into our bucket settings, we need to go into properties, and we need to find the website settings. So right now, for this, it's under properties, and you scroll all the way down, and you will find static website hosting. We'll edit this, and we will enable this setting. So we want to host a static website, okay? And we need to specify what is the name of the index document. So it is index.html, and we don't have any error documents. Finally, we get an information message saying that for the customers to access the website at this website endpoint, you must make all your content publicly readable. And to do so, we need to have an S3 bucket policy that's public and disable the S3 block public access settings. We've done that already in the previous lecture. So I'm going to just save the changes. And let's just say error.html. I don't know why it doesn't accept anything right now, and we don't have an error.html, but this is okay. Click on Save Changes, and now our bucket is allowed to be accessed as a static website hosting. So how do we know this? Well, I'm going to scroll down, and here we get the bucket website endpoints. So this is region specific. So if I click on this, it's going to open a new tab. And now this says, I love coffee, hello world, and displays the image of our coffee. So we can have a look at the URL. For example, this is the name of my bucket, .s3 website, and then this is the region I'm in, .amazonaws.com. So pretty easy. We have a static website. That means that we can deliver, for example, HTML files or images very easily into the web. And if I right click on this image and open it in a new tab, we can see that if we do /coffee, we have access to our coffee page, coffee image. And if I do /beach.jpg, then we get access to our beach picture. Okay, so that was a very, very short demo. But as you can see, static website hosting is pretty easy, just a setting to enable. You get a dedicated URL for your bucket, and you need to make sure that you have an S3 bucket policy that is public. Otherwise, you will not be able to access the HTML file and the images. So that's it. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture. So now let's have a play with object and bucket versioning. So for this, I'm going to go into properties, and the first setting is bucket versioning. I'm going to edit it and enable it. Click on Save Changes, and here we go. We have enabled bucket versioning. So how do we know that's working? Well, let's upload again our index.html file, but we're going to change the content of it. So let's open this in a new tab, and let's go into the object URL. As we can see right now, it says I love coffee, but let's go and edit that index.html file. So I'm going to change it to I really love coffee and save this file. Now I'm going back into my S3 management console, upload and add a file, which is going to be my index.html file, and click on upload. The upload has succeeded. And so now if I go into my index.html object page, go to versions, as we can see, it shows two versions. There's version ID right here and the second version ID, which is null. So we get the second version ID as null because this was the first time we uploaded our file and we hadn't enabled versioning yet, so it used to be a null. But as soon as we enabled bucket versioning and re-uploaded the file, we got a long string as a new version ID. So if I go back to my web page now and refresh it, it's going to say, I really love coffee. So the new object has been uploaded. Now, something cool we can see is that if we go back into the S3 bucket level console, you can click on list versions, and this is going to show the versions of all the files. So this added a version ID column. So thanks to this version ID, we can now do rollback. So for example, say I wanted to roll back this web page to just I love coffee. To do so, I can take this specific version ID right here and click on delete. What this will do is that it will delete that very specific version ID of that file, and this is something that is a permanent delete. So I have to say, yes, I'm happy to permanently delete this file. Press delete, and now this is good, this is all green. So if I go back to my first web page and refresh, I just now get I love coffee. And as you can see now, if we go into the objects, we have 3 objects, all version ID null. So let's just go and re-upload, for example, that file, just again to have the I really love coffee back. Okay, and now let's try something else. So let's go back into our bucket. There we go, we can list the versions and we can see we have 4 versions. Okay, great. What I want to do is to delete that coffee.jpg. But I'm not going to list versions for that. I'm going to disable this version. So now just see 3 files. And what I'm going to do is to click on coffee.jpg and click on delete. So in this case, because I didn't show the list object versions before, what this will do is that instead of deleting the object, this will add a delete marker to it. So let's see what that means. That means that I can roll back the object deletion. So in this case, I'm going to just type delete. As you can see, it's not permanently delete, it just says delete. So I'll delete the object, it is successful. I will exit this. And now we seem to have only 2 objects in our S3 bucket. So if I go into my web page and refresh it, it says I really love coffee, and I have to do actually a force refresh, which is for me Command Shift R. And so as you can see, the coffee image right here is broken. So if I try to open this image in the new tab, it says access denied. Actually, it doesn't exist, so it says access denied. So what I want to do is to restore that coffee.jpg image. And to do so, what I need to go is back into the S3 console, click on list versions. And as we can see now, actually my coffee.jpg file is still here, but it has a delete marker on it. And so thanks to bucket versioning, when we did delete an object at a high level, what it did is that it added a delete marker. Now to restore the previous version of our coffee.jpg file, what I need to do is to click on this object, delete marker, and click on delete. This will delete the delete marker, and the effect of deleting a delete marker is to restore the object's previous version. So now this is done. I can go back to my S3 bucket, and as we can see now, very soon, we have 3 objects, and if you look at the versions, they're what we expect. And if I go back to my first web page and refresh, my coffee.jpg image is back. So this is it. This is how I want to show you the different features of object versioning. I hope you understand it and hope you like it, and I will see you in the next lecture. So we'd like to enable server access logging, but to first do so, I need to go and create a new bucket in my S3 console. So let's go ahead and create a new bucket. I'll call it Stefan server access logging 2020 CCP. That should be good. And the region could be a region that again is close to you. So EU West 1 for me is great. And I will scroll down and I can just go all the way to the bottom and create this bucket. This is all I need to do for this. And this bucket is going to contain the logs of that first bucket we've been playing with all along. So I'm going to go into the setting of the Stefan CCP 2020 demo, click on properties, and then I will scroll down and try to find the server access logging setting. So to do so, I'm going to edit it, okay? And then I will click on enable, and I need to type the target bucket that I need to log my stuff into. So the format is s3:/ and the bucket name. So s3:/ and then the bucket name that's right here. So I copy this and paste it. And then as a prefix, you can, for example, add /logs. I will click on /logs and click on Save Changes. And now the server access logging setting has been enabled. And so what I can do is, for example, generate a little bit of logs by going onto my object, for example, my index.html object, and then go to the object URL and explore my first web page, then maybe just open my coffee.jpg, and that should be enough. Now, it's not immediate. You're not going to refresh right now and see logs. It's going to take a little bit of time, but let's wait. Usually it takes an hour or two. I'll wait an hour or two and pause the video, and I'll get back to you and show you the type of logs that have been created. Okay, so after about an hour, some objects have been delivered into my S3 buckets. And as we can see, we can take, for example, one of these logs and see what it says for us. So if we take this log file, for example, and I'll do action, download, and I'm going to open this with my text editor. So this is a plain text file and it's just a lot of text. But as we can see, we get some information. For example, here we get the source bucket. Here we're going to get a date time. We're going to get an IP address the request was made from. This was a get from tagging. So we're in a get from the encryption settings. So this is a bunch of like all the requests that will be done into your S3 bucket will be logged. And there is a way to read this file. And if you go to the server access logging documentation in AWS, they will tell you how to read this file and analyze it. But the idea is that as you have more and more requests done into your main S3 bucket, you're going to analyze these files as a whole and make sure that the requests are not giving you errors, that you're not getting attacked, and so on. So this was just a quick overview to show you how server access logging works. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture. Next, we would like to learn about S3 bucket replication. So for this, I'm going to go into the Amazon S3 console, and I'm going to create a new bucket, and I'll call it Demo Stefan CCP Replication 2020. The region, I can choose something that's going to be far away from Europe. For example, I can choose a region in the US, for example, US East 1. So this is going to replicate my bucket data from EU West 1 into US East 1. This is good. I'm going to scroll down, and what I need to do is to enable versioning. So for replication to happen and work, you need to enable bucket versioning on both the source bucket and the target bucket. So we can do it directly at bucket creation using this bucket versioning setting. Otherwise, we've seen how to do it before using the properties tab in the S3 management console. So now we have our main bucket and also a replication bucket. And I need to set up the replication from the main bucket into the replication bucket. To do so, let's go into my main bucket, and I'm going to go into management. And under management, I have what's called replication rule. So I'm going to create a replication rule, and I'll just call it demo rule. It's enabled, and the source bucket is this bucket. And we can limit the scope using one more filters, or we can apply it to all objects in the bucket. And to keep it simple right now, I'm going to apply it to all objects in the bucket. And we need to choose a destination. So you can either be a destination in this account or another account, but we want to have it in this account. And we need to enter the bucket name. So you can click on Browse S3 and find it. And we're looking at, actually, we need to just enter the bucket name itself. I don't know why it's not showing the right bucket name. So let's just copy this bucket name right here. And now it understands that the destination region is US East, Northern Virginia, US East 1. Okay. So this is really, really good. Now we have done what's called a cross-region replication because we are going across two different regions. Okay. Next, you need to choose an IAM role to do so. And so let's just create a new role for this. And then finally, let's not look at all the other settings. I'm just going to click on Save. And this has created my first replication rule. So now the replication configuration is successful. You can see it here. And so let's go into our main bucket. Right now we have 3 objects. And if we go into our replica objects, replica bucket, as we can see, we still have 0 objects. So you may say, why? This is a bit weird. We have enabled replication and we see nothing being replicated. And my answer to you is, well, objects before enabling replication are not replicated. So what I need to do is to re-upload a few files. So let's upload a file. and I'm going to upload, for example, the coffee.jpg yet again, and upload it. Now it is being uploaded. It is successful. So if I go into my S3 management console from my replica bucket now and click on refresh, hopefully very soon that object will appear here. And it took 5 seconds, but I paused the video, and now we can see my coffee.jpg file has been replicated. So if I click on list versions, we can see that the version here that starts with 7U91 is going to be the exact same version that I can find here if I list my versions in the main S3 buckets. So it's pretty handy, right? And you could do the same for all the other files. For example, for my beach and my index.html files, we can definitely re-upload them. And if I upload these two files, then they are going to be replicated into my other S3 bucket right here. So if I refresh, it still takes a little bit of time, it seems, today. And I just refresh one more time, and we can see the 3 objects have been replicated. So pretty cool. We've just set up a replication between a bucket in the region EU, Ireland, EU West 1, into a replica bucket in the region US East Northern Virginia, US East 1. So pretty awesome. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture. Okay, so now let's have a look at the different storage classes for our objects. To do so, I'm going to upload a new object. I'm going to add a file and let it be the coffee.jpg file again. And scrolling down under additional upload options, I will expand it, and there is the storage class option. So as you can see here, we get access to all the different storage classes in Amazon S3. And again, you can learn more about them by clicking on this Learn button, which is going to show you the documentation for these storage classes, as well as the Amazon S3 pricing associated with these storage classes. But anyway, let's go back to it. So as we've seen, we have a lot of different storage classes. We have standard IA, one-zone IA, reduced redundancy, which is deprecated, so this is why I don't really talk about it, intelligent tiering, Glacier, and Glacier Deep Archive. And each of the use case for these storage classes is defined in the table as well. So when we upload files normally, we just are into the standard storage class, okay? But we can choose a different storage class. For example, we can upload a file with the standard IA, which means that it's going to be infrequently accessed data, and there is a min object size, for example, of 128 kilobytes. Okay, so let's do this. Let's upload this file into the standard IA, and I'm going to scroll down and then click on upload. Now this has been done. If I click on my coffee.jpg file now and have a look at the object itself, as we can see, and let me scroll down, the storage class here says standard IA. But if I wanted to, I could change the storage class again by clicking on edit, and I could change the storage class to be, for example, Glacier, to move it into a long-term data archival of my data. So cool, I'm going to save my changes, and now my file has been going into, so if I click on exit and go back to my coffee.jpg, now the object is stored in the Glacier storage class, and in order to access it, you must first restore it. So it's a bit more trouble, obviously, and I can't see my object directly. Now, other things we can do with our objects into our bucket, and by the way, if you click here on list versions, you can see all the versions of your objects, but on the right hand side of this table, you have the storage class available to you. So we can see we have one in standard, one in Glacier, and one in standard IA. Okay, great. And so as I was saying, we can create transition rules to move objects between different storage classes. So if I go into management again and click on lifecycle rules, I can create a lifecycle rule, and I'll just call it demo rule, and we'll apply to all the objects in the bucket, but we could also use a filter to apply to less objects, okay? And then we can have different type of lifecycle rule options. For example, we can transition current versions of objects between storage classes, and we can say, okay, I want you to transition to standard IA after 35 days. And then I want you to transition into Glacier after 180 days, okay? And I say, yes, sounds good. Next, I can also choose to expire current objects or versions, meaning delete them. And so if I do so, I say after 365 days, please expire an object, and this will add a delete marker. And you could play around with it, but you can delete permanently previous objects or versions after, say, 720 days. Who knows, right? So you can create a rule like you want, and this shows you the timeline summary. So day 0, object is uploaded. Day 35 is transitioned into standard IA. Day 180 into Glacier, and day 365, the object expire. And for the previous version object, so the one that have a previous version thanks to bucket versioning, after almost 2 years, 720 days, the objects are permanently deleted. So I'll create this rule. And here we go, we have created our first lifecycle rule. So that's it. I hope you liked it. These lifecycle rules really allow you to optimize your cost, and they can be very handy if you have a lot of objects into your S3 buckets. And I will see you in the next lecture. So let's have a look at the Snow family. So services, AWS Snow family, which is large-scale data transport. So in here, we're able to either process data at the edge or migrate data in and out of AWS. So 2 different kind of use cases. And we have Snowcone, Snowball, and Snowmobile. So let's order one. So we have to plan your job. And so these are the use cases for the Snow family. So either we want to import data into Amazon S3, in which case we get an empty device that would be shipped to us, and then we transfer data onto it and we ship it back. Or we can export data from Amazon S3. So this is the other way. AWS will put data onto a Snow device, send it to us, and then we send back the device for erasing. Or if you want to do edge computing, we could select local compute and storage only. So let's have a look. Let's first look at import data into Amazon S3. In this case, we have to specify an address. So I'll just call it example. In example, the company is example, the country is the United States, Kingdom, whatever this works. Example, this is just a fake address, just so that we can, not applicable for division. The zip code is ABCDE, and the phone number is 0000000. Let's hopefully work this works, and then let's do express shipping or standard shipping, and this basically defines how fast the device gets to you. Okay, so my address has been created. Now I'll just create a job, so I can call this one test job, so test job. And as we can see, we need to choose our Snow device. So do we want a Snowball Edge storage optimized, Snowball Edge compute optimized, or compute optimized GPU? And I believe that in this region, in the London region, we don't have access to Snowcone devices, but they would be here if we had access to it. So maybe I'll just switch regions very quickly, go to Ireland, and we should start seeing some Snowcone as well. So the same job, and I will just do example everywhere. So I'll be very quick here and maybe it's also an availability based on the country. So let's choose Ireland, and then whatever state, example, and then A, B, C, D, E, and a bunch of zeros. Here we go, express shipping, click on next, and here we go. So now we have access to Snowcone as well. So here's my test job. And as we can see here, we have access to Snowcone, but also the 3 types of Snowball Edge, so storage optimized, compute optimized, or compute optimized with GPU. So if we were to transfer a small amount of data, we would choose an 8 terabyte Snowcone device. But if you want to transfer a large amount of data, maybe getting a Snowball Edge storage optimized is the best way to go. Next, we need to choose a S3 storage we want to load data onto. So we can just, for example, choose this bucket or create a new bucket to import data once we've loaded it onto the Snowball and send it back to AWS. And then click on next. We could choose some encryption. We can create some service roles. And then let's click on create service role just to have service access. Yes, this is done. Click on next. We can create an SNS topic to get notified. So I'll call it Snow Family Notifications. And for example, at example.com, which is a fake email address. And as we can see here, now that we have the Snowball devices shipped to us, we should download AWS Apps Hub to manage your Snow family devices and have a UI that allows us to transfer data into the devices or launch instances and so on. And to get Apps Hub, we just click on this link, and then we'll see that Apps Hub is something that needs to be installed for Windows, Mac, or Linux. And there's a down button right here. Okay, so this all makes sense. Then we can review the job, and please don't click on create because this will cost you a lot of money. This is not a free service, so I'm not going to click on create job. If you do, you're going to have a very heavy AWS bill, so please don't do that. But if you order a family device for another use case, which is edge computing. So let's do it for edge computing. So I can choose local compute and storage only, which is the edge computing. And as we can see here, we can create a cluster if we wanted to. This is optional, but if I were to enter a cluster name, then we would have a cluster, but I'm not going to do it. So this is not a cluster. Click on next. We'll use the same address as before, express shipping and test edge computing. As we can see here, we have the same Snow devices available to us, so Snow Cone, Edge for storage optimization and so on, but maybe because we want to run a compute job and that's going to be a heavy compute job, we can choose the third option, and we don't need a GPU maybe for this time, so let's not use a GPU. So we'll choose this option. This looks great. I will scroll down. Again, an S3 storage if you wanted to transfer back data into an S3 bucket. But here, as we can see, we can compute using EC2 instances, and this is optional. But here we can load EC2 AMIs onto our Snowball Edge device. And this is going to allow us to run computations using this EC2 instance. And this is where you would customize it. The rest of the options are exactly the same. So this really shows you the power of the Snow family. And you don't see a snowmobile here because I guess it's only for the United States. But you really see that you have different kind of devices for different kind of use cases and so on. So I hope that helped, and I will see you in the next lecture.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more hands-on training.